Hey guys, it's C.S. Joseph doing another episode for Season 14. This is Season 14, Episode 11. It's been a while since we've talked about romantic relationships, but for our members this month, wanted to make sure that we got in some additional content. The subject of today's lecture is relationships, and this is another Pedagogue relationship lecture. So for the rest of Season 14, or at least for the next section of Season 14, the next 8 episodes of Season 14, although we have 2 episodes already down, which is Episode 9 and Episode 10, where we talked about ENTP INFJ or ENFP INTJ relationships. This lecture is going to be ESTJ ISFP. So ESTJ ISFP for this particular lecture, and then obviously the next one will be ESTP ISFJ, ENTJ INFP, etc. We're just going to fill out all of the rest of the pedagogues and then move on into silver and bronze pairs. I'm going to cover every aspect of relationships, intimate relationships, with these lectures, and some additional new insights from recent material that I've read, and some additional upgrades that I've received from speaking with various members of the audience, the community, as well as my mentors. So something for you guys to be excited about. But Season 14 is a living season. It is not just done with the golden pairs. We are going to be going through all of the pairs at one point in time as part of the intermediate lectures that we've done. So that sounds fantastic, so let's get down to business. So ESTJ ISFP, they are known as a pedagogue relationship. The pedagogue relationship, if you remember, the whole point of the relationship is to reach the highest level of personal growth while simultaneously maintaining the absolute highest level of sexual compatibility. These people have fantastic sex, as good of sex as a golden pair would. And I mean, I could personally vouch for this, given that I was in an INFJ relationship. I had a pedagogue relationship at one point in time with a woman named, and the sex was great. She definitely rocked my world, and that was, fantastic at that point in time. And I can really honestly say that golden pairs and pedagogue relationships could definitely go that way. Now, while that's being said, that's very natural sexual compatibility. It's not necessarily nurtural. And what I mean by nurtural is that just because someone has amazing natural sexual compatibility does not mean that other types or other relationships can have as high sexual compatibility. The reason why is because from a nurtural standpoint, you can actually end up developing the skill and developing the talent over time. And that's something really to consider. That's something very important, because if you don't understand, it's like you still have the risk of things being banal. You still have things being boring or just lame, even with natural compatibility. Someone could lack sexual skill, in which case I would recommend studying sex positions and Kama Sutra, as well as various other resources in terms of how to be the absolute best lover that you could be within the bedroom. And of course this changes between the types, because sometimes you have SI users, sometimes you have SE users, sometimes your partner who may be an SE user gets really tired of being the SE user and they want to cognitive transition their shadow and experience sex as their shadow, and then you need to take on the role of extroverted censor. These are very important sexual concepts that everyone has to realize. You have to leverage your cognitive transitions to be able to handle this, So, and by the way, guys, I'm not even going to bother identifying anything about ESTJ or ISFP or like how to type them. I'm just going to assume, since this is like intermediate lectures, I'm going to assume that you already know the basics. I'm going to assume that you know how to use the type grid, the interaction style, the temperament, the cognitive function stack. I'm going to assume that you've watched, other episodes in Season 14 and Season 19, etc. So just understand that. So ESTJs and ISFPs, they have amazing sex, and ESTJs are heavily attracted to ISFPs because ISFPs, they work with their hands. They're kind of really down to earth, very free spirits. ESTJs wish they were as free, and they really, really make ESTJs feel wanted. And that's one of the biggest benefits, to an ESTJ in that relationship. Also, the ISFP is really responsible about making the ESTJ feel comfortable. The ESTJ doesn't have to necessarily conflict, because the ISFP is like, okay, I need to make them comfortable. I'm going to make them comfortable. Here's what I want to do, or here's how I'm going to do it. But not only that, the ESTJ, since they're an STJ, they're very capable of complaining, but they complain in a very responsible way, which means they have a pretty high tolerance for things in their relationship. And what that means is that they can tolerate things for a while, but after a while it's just going to bother them, and they're just going to be like straight up tell the ISFP to their face, hey, this is like really making me uncomfortable, and then they'll handle it. Plus, the ESTJ is also super mega honest, and that's one of the huge advantages about an ESTJ. They're very honest. Well, they're not exactly honest about sometimes having their heads in the sand, or like being ignorant, as STJs can be. One of the benefits, though, of an ESTJ, though, is that they will be honest with how they feel, and it's up to everybody in the relationship to kind of try to figure out how to like make them feel better if possible. And that's generally how it goes, which, it's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's even a mystery to the ESTJ. Sometimes it's always a mystery, or more likely a mystery, to the ISFP, basically. So that's just something to be aware of, when you're dealing with, relationships. Just understand that, like, people, obviously everyone's different, but, where these two types are the same is that, they at least meet each other in the physical world and interact with it in ways that complements the other person, which is fantastic. And this, again, like, it's absolute great sex. The ISFP feels like that they can get away with punishing the ESTJ, and the ESTJ absolutely enjoys it in various capacities. But they can also switch roles in various times. And at times, the supporter ESFJ side can end up coming out and be really, really supportive to the ESTJ. And the ESTJ ends up loving that. It makes them more loyal to the ISFP. It makes them feel wanted. And it's even better, because they really, really, really love sometimes experts feeling nemesis, because the ISFP sometimes worries that they're not being very caring enough, and they worry about that, and then the FI inferior of the ESTJ really locks into that and actually ends up coming up to an enjoyment. However, that can also backfire in that situation as well, which is not exactly ideal for ISFPs. Because the thing is, though, is that while this relationship is really great, they can do things together, they can have a life together, they have amazing sex, it's like, even though they're in their 30s, they're still having sex in cars, for example. You know what I'm saying? They have that compatibility, they have that nailed down. It is exquisite for both people in that relationship. However, the problem is that this relationship has a lack of emotional compatibility, and emotional compatibility is also something that most people don't really realize. Now, there's something called a cohort relationship according to socionics, and a cohort relationship is when you have somebody with highest emotional compatibility. It's like a reverse pedagogue relationship. Highest emotional compatibility, but no sexual compatibility. And these relationships are super good for learning. They're super good for, it's kind of like a half camaraderie setup. Very good for shoulder-to-shoulder friendships, basically. They're like partners in crime, essentially, but they're not exactly, someone that would ever have any sexual attraction. And oftentimes you see people in cohort relationships getting married, and it's probably because that was like their first lay, you know what I'm saying? And based on that, it's like, okay, wow, why would you do that? You haven't lived life long enough to actually like handle that. Speaking of which, guys, like, just so you guys know, like, all you people out there that are like Christian and support Christian narrative, and as well as Christian tradition, I tell you the truth, premarital sex is not a sin, just so you know. And if you don't agree with me on that, just read the Torah. Judaism, for example, does not outlaw premarital sex at all. And if Christians are to claim that the Old Testament is canon for Christians, God didn't change his mind in the New Testament. So you might want to understand how that goes. And note that the word porneia, which is used consistently in the New Testament to describe sexual immorality, the definition of porneia or the definition of fornication is wrong. One of the two. And based on that, you might want to look that up. Also, there's evidence to suggest, some people argue that Ruth slept with Boaz before they got married. Some people argue that they didn't. If you compare that language to language that's within the Song of Solomon, I think they actually did sleep together, which is an example of premarital sex, etc. But guys, like, here's where the sin is. You guys want to actually know where the sin is? The sin is having sex outside of an agreement. If you have an agreement to non-exclusivity, then you have an agreement to non-exclusivity. No one's doing anything wrong. If you have an agreement to exclusivity, then you have an agreement to exclusivity. That's where the sin is. It's breaking your promise. Do you know how I know? Matthew chapter 5, okay? The Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is bashing divorce for how stupid divorce is, but at the same time, the exact following verse, he says, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. That's literally how marriages, that's literally how any sexual relationship or any intimate relationship should be handled. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. That is the standard, folks. Oftentimes I tell people, women, hey, do not have sex with a man unless he's willing to die for you, because that means, he's willing to be committed. Men, don't have sex with a woman unless you're willing to die for them, etc. But women, if you are having sex with a man who is willing to die for you, you owe him respect. The kind of respect that puts you at risk of being a doormat. That kind of respect. If you're not willing to do that, you might want to rethink your relationship, because some women out there are definitely willing to submit and respect their men, and some of them are not. If your man's not worth being, submissive to, then you need to possibly end that relationship and move on. This is why, guys, under the system of let your yes be yes and your no be no, this basically means all monogamy and all polyamory is technically biblically allowed. So get your heads out of your asses and actually start applying critical thinking to the Bible before you start judging each other or feeling guilty for things you shouldn't even feel guilty about. It's not your fault that everyone else in the whole everything world is trying to tell you how to live your life sexually. Get over yourself and tell them to get over themselves. This is just not really how it goes, guys. Seriously. You think that there's problems, you think that there's sins where there actually isn't. Just wake up. How about you just be wise, Anyway. So, ESTJs, they can be very traditional, and sometimes, they allow that Christianese or their religious convictions get in the way of things, And, while I'm bashing Christianity here, for that sexual bullshit, well, guess what? Islam has the same problem. Because Islam, especially Muhammad, definitely claimed that the Gospels were actually precursor canon to the Quran. And that's a problem, too, because there's these little tiny contradictions between the New Testament and the Old Testament already. So you have to go back even further. And yet, oftentimes, Islam is diametrically opposed to the Torah, as much as it is, and in some cases, opposed to what's stated, by the words of Jesus. And yet, Muhammad made that claim. This is a contradiction to me. This tells me, as a TI user, this is not something I should be listening in on or believing, such that I apply logic to, and then basically keep all the good stuff, throw out all the bad stuff. And that's basically my approach with any religious, spiritual situation. It's just from my point of view, I maintain that Jesus is the highest authority out there, spiritually speaking. Why? Because he didn't lie to anyone. Whereas in a lot of ways, I can actually argue, if not prove, that everyone else did in some capacity, or they're just ignorant, one of the two. That includes Joseph Smith, by the way. That guy's an ENFP. Well, anything can be true. Anything can be false. Okay, wow. So I want that guy as my spiritual leader? Really? No. Mr. Walking Contradiction. No thanks. You should have done a little bit more research. You probably would have gotten away with it. Anyway. So just understand, guys, religion just impacts us sexually so much, and then we just need to go abandon it. Apply critical thinking to religious texts, and you'll realize that you're a lot freer than you realize. And then also, make sure you teach that to your children. Seriously. And again, guys, this is the spirit of what a pedagogue relationship is all about. When an ESTJ and an ISFP comes together, these people are absolutely amazing together. The problem is they lack emotional compatibility. And that can be bad. In fact, to the immature, untrained eye, that is a bad thing. Because the ESTJ ends up putting their values and their sense of morality above the ISFP. especially since the ESTJ is very authoritarian, they're very affiliative, and the ISFP often believes that the ESTJ is just trying to control them. And it's really actually just because the ESTJ is ultimately trying to, put their morals immaturely over the ISFP, which is unfair to the ISFP, causes the ISFP to realize that their choice is being taken away, their freedom of choice. Well, that's not appropriate. And the ISFP needs to criticize, provide input to the ESTJ, and be like, hey, you can't do that. You can't think that. That's not fair. You're taking away my freedom of choice. Then the ESTJ is like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I need to give you your freedom of choice back. And then hopefully they go to the bedroom so that they don't, have problems. The pedagogue relationships need to have sex almost every single day. It's sacred to their relationship. Now, other relationships where a bronze pair, golden pair, silver pair, etc., those pairs still have emotional compatibility, and because of that, a lack of sex can actually be compensated for, but in a pedagogue relationship, not so much. This can be a serious problem. So make sure, folks, if you're in a pedagogue relationship, you need to be intimate constantly. Absolutely constantly. Men, you need to go out of your way to esteem yourselves, because here's the truth. You want your woman to be attracted to you? She is only as attracted to you as other women are attracted to you. That's a fact. So if you're not going out of your way to be attractive to all women, then she's not going to be as sexually attracted to you. And the more aware you are of your own sexual market value out there, then she's even more attracted to you. So if you're going to be like some ESTJ lazy ass, or an ISFP lazy ass, because guess what? ISFPs can be insanely idle, just let their bodies go and not give a shit about anything. Whereas an ESTJ, the same kind of a thing. They could get lazy, stuck in their comfort zone. It's like, oh, I already did all this thing, so I'm just going to rest on my laurels and be busy. It's so annoying to watch an ESTJ, man or woman, rest on their laurels. And oftentimes ESTJ men or women rest on their laurels in their marriages. It's so pathetic. It is so pathetic. And funnily enough, as much as I'd like to say one gender does it more than another with ESTJs, actually, they all do it. They all do it. It's like, oh, I did all these things, I worked really hard, now I don't have to work really hard anymore, and they just let everything go. Idiots. That's not how it works. If you're in a marriage, you need to be constantly playing the game. You need to play the game even more so. That's just real. You hear about those pickup artists, you read the book The Game by Neil Strauss, who's an ENTP, etc. You read all these books, or you read The Mystery Method by Mystery, who is Neil Strauss's mentor, etc. Or, there's Rational Male, there's No More Mr. Nice Guy, Dr. Robert Glover, he's just released another book on dating, which is amazing. Read that. Holy shit, read that. But the point is, it's all these books out there, they all say the same thing. If you're married, you need to keep your game up. So men, get your heads out of your asses and stop resting on your laurels. It's super annoying. And if you're an ESTJ man with an ISFP woman, there's no way she's going to respect you. And guess what? She's going to cheat on you. Or turn into, the biggest lazy fuck you've ever met. Seriously. Don't even do that. By the way, guys, I honestly don't give a shit if you don't like me cussing. I'm just going to be, my real self. So, and if you're all going to go upset at me and be like, oh, the Bible says not let any unwholesome word, come out of your mouth. I'll be honest with you. A good fuck you can be pretty wholesome sometimes. Especially, as iron sharpens iron, so does one man to another. What that means is, if I'm adding emphasis by using curse words, etc., to get you to listen, and then it actually makes an impact on you, and you actually listen, I think that's far more valuable and quite wholesome. So, again, use critical thinking on the Bible instead of, judging me. Seriously, stop doing that. The Bible's not just for you affiliative people. It's for everybody, pragmatic included. You might want to consider that. I don't see Jesus criticizing Peter anytime he cursed, and he cursed a lot. So, seriously, come on, guys. Wake up. The world is different. Now, idle words suck. That's a little different thing. But idle words there's so much more with idle words. And of course, you're informative like me. You're at higher risk of having idle words. So you might want to keep track of that. So, ESTJs, again, the emotional incompatibility is a problem. And here's how it is on the ISFP side. ISFPs, they put their status and their reputation over the ESTJ. And oftentimes in relation, this could be with men or women, ISFPs can actually be pretty stubborn. Now, we all know that TI users are, probably the most stubborn, especially TI Hero is the most stubborn, but that's not to say that FI Hero is not capable of some kind of stubborn. And they are. Because here's the thing, an ISFP, because they're very pragmatic, very freedom-oriented, they're not just going to accept what anyone says, because they know that their freedom of choice is theirs at the end of the day, and they're not necessarily going to accept what people are telling them as truth. And this is really hard in a relationship, especially with an ESTJ who's done all of the research and providing sound input to the ISFP they're in a relationship with, and that they're banging on a regular basis. Like, God, I hope they're banging on a regular basis. They better be. But the point is that, like, when this happens, it's a serious, serious issue. It's a serious issue. So because of this, the ISFP is not exactly going to listen, because an ISFP, just like an INFP, has to hear the same thing from multiple sources usually before them to make a decision. And that's especially hard for a woman, if you're an ISFP woman in this relationship, because ISFP women, like, they have a hard time respecting their husbands or their boyfriends or the men in their life, because all women have a hard time respecting men in their life. Let's just be honest. Because the real situation is, guys, like, women really actually don't care how much work and effort you put in the relationship. Men have this problem where they think that they have all this relationship equity built up in their relationship for doing good things for the women, but then all of a sudden their women betrays them anyway. Because, you know, as the adage go, women have this problem where they just love about any jackass on the street. And they don't care about, you know, at the end of the day, they don't care about how much you've invested in the relationship. You see what I'm saying? This puts a lot of risk and even more, you know, more problems with an ESTJ. And this is why the demand for women to respect and submit to their men is a requirement. Because it's the only thing that can get in the way, the only concrete action that a woman could take to prove to their man that she is actually worth being around. She is worth provisioning for. She is worth providing for. That she is worth actually being in his home. Because it is written, better to be on the corner of one's own roof than to be into his own building or home with a quarrelsome and disrespectful woman. That's a Proverbs. That's just reality. You know what I'm saying? So women, you know, ISFP women, ESTJ women, you gotta respect. You have to respect your husband. But however, you know, the ISFP in this situation, because of the lack of emotional compatibility, they're oftentimes putting their status above their husbands. And, you know, in ISFP women, this is pretty bad because it's going to make them turn into, like, cockhoppers. Like, I don't know how many ISFP women I've seen. In fact, the last ISFP woman that I coached, who had this ENTP man that was so in love with her and willing to take a bullet for her and definitely willing to sacrifice himself for her, although, like, he was, like, totally beta mindset, and he should probably, like, fix that. But the bottom line is he's willing to go that far because at least he met the standard of, hey, you know, don't have sex with a man unless he's willing to die for you. He definitely was willing to take a bullet for her. She even admitted it. But she's like, oh, no, I don't really want him. I just want to see what else is out there for me. And it's like, okay, you can go ahead and do that. You know, if that's what you really want, you can go ahead, you know. But eventually, you know, he'll figure it out because, you know, as she ages, her sexual usefulness is just going to end up depleting, and she's going to have to get over it. And then, you know, and that's just kind of how it is. And then her life priorities are going to start changing because as her youth fades, as she's completely wasting her youth, and which is pretty typical of women between 20 and 25 anyway. So they don't actually, you know, statistically, they don't actually know, you know, in that regard. They don't see, and especially an ISFP woman wouldn't see the consequences of her own actions. She thinks she knows the consequences of her actions because any tricked her, but, like, no, it's not actually happening. So she ends up putting her status over her ESTJ, and in that phase of her life, she's more than likely to just, you know, cock hop, basically. Go from one cock to another as she gains status, because based on these men who are able to provide her with more status. And she ends up putting her status over her ESTJ. That's not to say that that can't happen outside the age bracket from 20 to 25, which it absolutely can. It absolutely can. So you always got to watch out your ISFP just in case. You ever seen that movie, A Star is Born? Oh, yeah, that's all ISFP. You got to watch that movie and understand. Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper is dope, by the way, just saying. But keep an eye on that because this is two FI users putting each other's status, putting their own status above the other. This is a huge problem. Huge problem. So in this relationship, the ISFP would do this. And even an ISFP man would end up putting their status over their woman. Although technically, given how sacrificial men are typically, over time, and men are technically the true romantics, I'd maintain that an ISFP man is less likely to put his status over his ESTJ woman, it can happen, not as likely. It's more likely for an ISFP woman to do that to an ESTJ man because the feminine imperative gets in the way and changes the priorities. Yeah, that's right, folks. You're getting a little bit more of gender dynamics in these lectures through Pedagogue than most other people would. Something for you guys to consider. So, anyway, so how do you solve this problem? How do you solve the problem of this disparity and lack of emotional compatibility? Because both of these types are going to the other and trying to get the other one to think highly of them, but their thinking is so low that they don't think highly of the other, and then they end up getting emotionally butthurt and sad over it. But hey, at least the sex is great. You know what I'm saying? And this really can cause the relationship to end. But here's the thing, though: there's huge benefits to not having the emotional compatibility because of the conflict it provides. The conflict, the camaraderie, the conflict from within this pedagogue relationship is so good because both these types end up learning so much more about their own emotional makeup that they actually become better people. And this actually helps them both develop their critic functions better. So like, for example, introverted sensing critic on the ISFP would be confronted with having to have memories to keep track of how their ESTJ lover is going to react to them. So then at that point, they start studying, they start writing things down, they start remembering what's really important to their ESTJ, and they end up loving or respecting their ESTJ a lot more based on their needs because they're able to keep track of that. And then the ESTJ is also able to realize that even the ISFP needs to be comfortable every now and then, and they go out of their way to develop that, which is great. Another thing is, though, is like, what is ultimately the source of the incompatibility from an emotional standpoint? And the answer to that question is the nemesis functions. The ISFP worries so much about being selfish and that they're not caring enough. They either overcompensate or they undercompensate. And this is a huge, huge problem. This is a huge problem. And, what is someone to do in that situation? Well, there's a lot of things that you could do, but really, you just got to get over your worry. You have to be certain. So for an ISFP, you have to have concrete proof at the end of every day that proves that you are caring towards the ESTJ. ESTJs, you have to have concrete proof and behavior and actions at the everyday, not words, actions at the end of the day, because I know how much you STJs love your words. I know how much you ISFPs love your words too, but ISFPs still have the benefit of performance through extroverted sensing, so they can have something to show for it, to prove it concretely at the end of the day. ESTJ, not so much. And because of that, from an ESTJ standpoint, they need to not fight with words and actually fight with behavior, and actually have behaviors that proves that these ESTJs are verifying their beliefs. Because the ESTJ, their beliefs and their own morality are so sacrosanct that they put that over their ISFP lover, and that just causes the ISFP lover to feel bad about themselves. It causes the ISFP to automatically assume that the ESTJ thinks less of them, that the ESTJ thinks there's a bad person, but that's not actually probably what's happening. And this creates a loss in translation, specifically, which is a serious issue. Something I don't really recommend at all. So please make yourselves aware of this phenomenon. Please understand that people have to go out of their way. You have to go out of your way to understand these little intricacies within the different types. So in the ISFP too, like, they'll put their status and reputation, and they'll talk so much about all these different components. Sometimes even talk badly about behind the ESTJ, behind their back. Like, for example, an ISFP woman gossiping about her ESTJ boyfriend behind his back, etc. It's extremely hurtful, and it happens. And it's also interesting too because hey, the ISFP is informative, the ESTJ is direct. The ESTJ, especially if he's a man, he's all about overt communication, and you have the ISFP is all about covert communication. Now, if their communication would be better if their genders were reversed, technically. If it was an ISFP man with an ESTJ woman, they'd have a better opportunity communicating because it's a little bit more balanced. The natural latent covert communication in the woman is optimized by her direct interaction style, whereas with an ISFP, if he's a man, overt communication is optimized through the directness of being masculine because he is a man, while also being primarily informative through his interaction style. This creates a healthier dynamic in this regard. And in my opinion, the ISFP male, ESTJ female version of this pedagogue relationship would technically be more successful under the nurture of a Western society. I mean, that's just really the only way that I could see it at this point. The other kind of relationship, well, awesome, an ISFP woman, ESTJ man, it's really, really hard. It's really hard to do. But it's worth it. It's worth it. And oftentimes, I tell people, hey, pedagogue relationships are among the top 5, the top 5 sexual relationships you should go for. There's different interpretations of that. If we're looking at just regular natural compatibility, golden pair, silver pair, bronze pair, pedagogue, and then benefactor, or maybe even benefactor, but no, yeah, pedagogue first, then benefactor, would be the top 5 sexual relationships for anyone to have, and they'd have a really great time. However, reality, when you include human nurture in place, it's likely actually bronze pair is first, followed by pedagogue relationship. So maybe bronze, pedagogue, silver, golden, and benefactor. It would probably be more likely a better approach in terms of relationships. So just, be aware of that, guys. But again, the pedagogue relationship, because of all of the conflict produced by this emotional compatibility, each person involved, as long as they have the patience and enough sex to be able to stay with each other, and use the fire of eroticism as much as possible, because that's what the pedagogue relationship really is all about. The pedagogue relationship ends up usually maximizing sexual behavior more than any of the other relationships, because they realize that it's the best way for them to connect. So each person makes heavy investment into their sexual activity, or at least they should, because they know it's so powerful and so potent for their relationship. It's no different from any other pedagogue relationship. But with ESTJs and ISFPs, there's a lot of issues there that can be a problem. So just be aware, folks. It's super important to understand these incompatibilities. But like I said, the personal growth that's afforded to somebody through this relationship is insane. So let's talk about the actual cognitive mechanics that one actually has to utilize to make this relationship a success. First point, number 1, have sex as often as possible and with as much varietal as possible. You need to study sexual technique and sexual behavior. Men, read the How to Be a 3% Man. Read all of the Rational Male books. Read No More Mr. Nice Guy. Read The Game. Read The Mystery Method. Read How to Be a 3% Man. I think I already said that already. All of these things are necessary for you to keep your game up. Game is everything in sexual relationships. If you're not doing game, you're basically an idiot, don't know what you're doing, and she will cheat on you or she will abandon you in some capacity. Like, that's just a reality. You will get divorced or you will get a breakup, especially depending on what phase of life that she's in. Those are resources what you need. Women, learn Kama Sutra. Like, seriously, learn sex positions, learn all of the capabilities. Read 50 Shades of Grey. Holy shit. Like, every 50 Shades of Grey book. Although I think the first 2 are excellent. I think the third one just kind of like absolutely sucks, but that's just, my personal opinion on that one. But recognize, there's plenty of resources out there. And no, I'm not saying like go delve in eroticism, etc., or like romance, and especially don't watch pornography. I mean, pornography is like really, it's just a stupid decision, honestly. Just don't do it. Like, there's no point. There's really no point. Don't do it. So, okay. So yeah, and both of you, please God Almighty, read the 48 Laws of Power. Do yourselves a favor. Read the 48 Laws of Power and the Art of Seduction. If you don't understand that, like, wow, like, you may as well just end your relationship now and move on. Like, seriously, educate yourselves. It's important. But anyway, so managing this incompatibility, obviously the first things first is sex. You need to have sex a lot. Now, women in this case, women don't want sex as much as men do, and if you think otherwise, you're out of your mind. The reason why is because they don't have as much testosterone in the system, and this is basic biology. Come on, guys. But the point is, when it comes to sexual relations, men, you have to be on top of your game. That way you can maintain desire. Remember, if you want to have success with a sexual relationship with an ESTJ or an ISFP, depending on what side you are of this relationship, it's based on, if you're a man, you are only as attractive to your woman as you are attractive to other women. You want to ham up your attractiveness to other women as much as possible, because that will just make her want to take your brains out. That's just reality. That's reality. So keep that in mind. So sex is important. That's the number one thing. Number two, here's the number two thing. Patience. You need to have as much patience as possible. Patience for the emotional part. You guys need to spend so much time listening to the other person. Now, cognitive function-wise, the ISFP, it is on the ISFPs. It is the ISFP's responsibility, right here. This is it, at literally 41 minutes into this lecture. So you guys understand, it is the ISFP's responsibility to, guess what? Be really, really caring towards the ESTJ. Super caring. Super supportive. And I mean, like, really supportive. The kind, like super supportive. Almost to the point of being a doormat. Almost. Almost to the point of potentially giving up freedom of choice temporarily. Right? Because this is the problem that a lot of SPs don't realize. How their freedom of choice has negative consequences that affect other people. Right? And it's those negative consequences that ultimately causes the ESTJ to be disloyal, because the ESTJ is constantly being uncomfortable because the ISFP is irresponsible with their freedom of choice. This is why SPs, SP types, artisan types, represent the majority of people in prison, because they don't know the consequences of their actions, and they use their freedom of choice such that it causes unsafe and damaging collateral damage to other people. Collateral damage. SPs are walking collateral damage to others. SJs know this instinctively. SJs have the super highest tolerance for putting up with it, but eventually the SJ can't handle it anymore. So they either abandon the SP, or they're disloyal to the SP, or they make decisions to control the SP and take away the SP's freedom. Okay? So an ISFP in this relationship has to be responsible for their freedom of choice and choose to be supportive for the sake of their ESTJ. It is the ISFP's responsibility, even though they lack, and that even sometimes means sacrificing an opportunity for yourself to have higher status for the sake of caring for your ESTJ. Because your ESTJ won't be comfortable for long. You know you're making them comfortable. They won't be comfortable for long if you come off as someone who doesn't care about their feelings. That's the thing, because their feelings are so important to you, so important to the ESTJ. And in fact, ISFPs, here's the reality. An ESTJ's feelings is more important to the ESTJ than your feelings are to you. That's just real. Get over it. If you don't think that's true, I mean, like, seriously, get out of here. Just get out. Like, seriously, get out. Frog out, Hashtag something awful. Like, seriously, frog out. It's not cool. ESTJs. How to get over emotional incompatibility with your ISFP. You need to go out of your way to let go of your status for the sake of the ISFP's status. You need to go out of your way to say these words. I think highly of you. To the ISFP so much. Their status, their reputation. They're so afraid of other people thinking they're stupid. You need to work to elevate your ISTP or your ISFP so that they don't believe that they are stupid. You need to make sure that you're going out of your way to verify your own beliefs and their beliefs, such that their beliefs are closest to the truth, so that they don't have to be afraid of their beliefs not matching the truth, so that then people don't think that they're stupid. That's so integral to ISFP. This even to the point where you don't care so much about your status or your own reputation. You care about their status and their reputation, such that when you're going around, talking to people, having conversations, you speak highly of your ISFP lover. Tell other people how much you think of them, because it will always make it back. It will always make it back to the ISFP, and then they will feel like they have a higher status with you and higher status in general. Also, ESTJs, don't make stupid decisions which cause you to lose status yourself, because you losing status causes your ISFP to lose status. And then they don't even want you anymore. See what I'm saying? You have to be the epitome of, character in the eyes of other people, so that the ISFP can always still be comfortable too. Even though the burden of comfort is more for you, and the ISFP will provide that, and that's important. However, there is still a small secondary burden of comfort for the ISFP that you have to meet. And that ISFP will only be able to make you as comfortable as you are secondarily meeting that need, because that's a need they have. They have a need for status. They have a need for feeling good about themselves, just like you do, except their need is bigger. And as long as you feel good about yourself and they're actually being caring towards you and empathetic, even though their base default is sympathy, as long as they're being empathetic to you, and feeling your feelings and really proving concretely that they're being caring to you, you need to reciprocate by extending and making their status and loyalty better as much as possible. That's your job, ESTJs, in this relationship. All the while, you have the engine, a high-performance engine of sexuality in the background. Sexuality is a requirement for this relationship. Like, to the point where you're, touching each other in public and you don't care the consequences. That kind of sexuality. Super, super important. Actually go and be well practiced. It's really understood. You have to, ESTJs, you have to realize it's your duty at the beginning of the day to start. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. ESTJs, you have to, put on this air of mystique, get their imagination going. You have to get started in this area and try to, get the ISFP thinking about sex ahead of time, right? And then the ISFP will just want to, and if you're an ESTJ man, you're on top of your game, it's all good. If you're an ESTJ woman, and you're taking care of yourself and watching over your beauty and going to the gym and making sure that you're keeping your sexual market value as high as possible at all times, regardless of your age, then this won't be a problem. You will always be wanted. You'll be always wanted by your ISFP man. But just understand, that's just how it goes. Not only that, if you guys can get over this incompatibility issue, which can be solved by heavy communication, which is solved by the ISFP being extra caring, more so caring about the ESTJ in some cases, and not as, obviously the ISFP needs to take care of themselves and their FI hero will demand it, but at the same time, they also have to make sure that they are including the ESTJ. ESTJs, that's the other thing. Inclusiveness is important for ISFPs. Tell them, hey, I'm going to go do this. Do you want to come with me? Always give them a choice to come with you and do something. It could be as dumb as going to the store. They want in. See what I'm saying? Usually they want in. They're really behind the scenes, so they may not. But other SP types absolutely do. But give them choices. They feel good about themselves when you give them choices. It's your job, ESTJs, to give ISFPs choices. It's super important, okay? And then after a while, the ISFP is going to be feeling really great because you're increasing their status. You're going to be feeling really great because the ISFP is being really supportive towards you. And then once you have those issues handled, you're off scot-free. You have a fantastic relationship. And both of you are gaining the highest possible personal growth within your relationship. You guys are communicating properly. You understand each other's emotional needs. You're meeting those emotional needs. You're making sure that you have absolute sexual dominance in your relationship on a regular basis, which is a lot harder for women to do, by the way, in that relationship, But hey, men, if you're on top of your game, it won't matter. It won't matter, because if other women value you, or other women want you, or other women are trying to get you, then she'll definitely be after you this entire time. That's the secret to having great sex and definitely in a long-term relationship. But too many men get too comfortable when they're in their LTR, and then it's like, oh, you know, and then they let that completely subside, and then all of a sudden the woman loses attractiveness in you because, hey, because here's the thing, seduction is, the requirements for seduction goes up by tenfold when you're in a long-term relationship. Like, that's just real. You have to do it. It's a requirement. Get over it. You know, figure it out. You know, and women, like, if you're not taking care of yourself and you're letting your body go, like, you're going to be liable to be thrown in the dumpster, because a humble woman is a woman who's not all that in the bag of chips, and she's going to actually take care of herself and make sure that you know, her beauty is not fading faster than her age is going. You see what I'm saying? And I'll be honest, like, I've met some older women in my life that have finer asses than women that are my age. It's just absolutely asinine. I even dated a woman who was like 17 years older than me, and during that time, like, she had a finer ass than most women that I knew, and it's like, wow, it's nice to see that you know, you got that figured out. Yeah, she had pretty good, you know, Asian genes and whatnot, but for the most part, she took care of herself. And that was pretty great. You know, it's just ridiculous to me to see women my own age, and it's just like, wow, are you serious? Are you absolutely serious? You know? And it's so funny to listen to women who, like, complain about men their own age not being interested in them. It always baffles me and boggles my mind, because it's like, you know, you kind of did it to yourself, right? You know, you kind of were a little bit irresponsible, you know, in 20 to 25 year range when you could have been better, or maybe didn't have the opportunity to have the party years because, you know, you're probably eating like really horrible food growing up, and then it just got worse for you at that point in time. You know what I'm saying? Like, careful, guys. Like, you have to understand that there's always consequences to your actions. This is especially painful to an ISFP woman, actually. However, ISFP women have SE parent, and SE parent, you guys know how your body's going to react to every decision you make, which means SE parents, out of all the types, have the least excuse, in terms of women, have the lowest excuse to not be beautiful, because you guys know how your body reacts to everything you do more than anybody else. There's no rhyme or reason. You have no excuse. So you have to go out of your way to take care of yourself. Besides, given that you know how reactive your body is, you'll be able to fix yourselves and get yourselves back on the right track like that. So I highly recommend it. If you want to learn more on how to do that, Thomas DeLauer, Dr. Eric Berg, etc. There's so many resources out there. Get on like a keto diet or a vegan diet, one of the two, depending on your body morphism. If you want to learn more about body morphism, look up Tom Venuto. Also, Dr. Eric Berg talks about body morphism as well. But just like get your heads, you know, in the right place in terms of your bodies. Like, seriously, take care of yourself. Because, like, I don't care how shallow you think men are. Men are in a relationship because you're beautiful, and beauty equals prettiness plus humility. And there's tons of women out there with a fine ass and a nice pair of tits, but quite frankly, like, men still don't go for them because they lack the humility. You know, and it's usually women who are 20 to 25 who lack that humility entirely. And this causes men to believe, like, wow, those women are actually ugly because, you know, they're at that situation. So keep that in mind. Like, seriously, keep that in mind. You know, recognize that it's not good enough just to have a fine ass and pair of tits. It's not good enough. You need to go, like, more than that. And it's so funny to me to see women accuse men of being shallow when they're the ones that have, when those women have, like, implants. Like, they're such hypocrites in those situations. So, like, stop. Just be real. Like, seriously, just be real. A man can love you regardless of what area you are in your life, provided you're on the path to continuous improvement. If you're not on the path to continuous improvement, then why is he with you? I don't know. Understand, you know, like, that's just the situation, you know. It's just so amazing to me that I could, you know, talk to a 73-year-old woman who has a 21-year-old daughter, you know, and she's extremely attractive for her age, compared to other women her age, and most women, and even some women that are like 20, 30 years younger than her, and it's just like, wow, how is that even possible? It's because she devoted herself to take care of herself. And this is something that ISFP women especially need to learn and master through their ASI their SI critic. ESTJ women, however, guys, watch out, because ESTJ women, you guys, because you rest on your laurels, oftentimes statistically ESTJ women let their bodies go, and because they're resting on those, oh, I got married, I don't have to care about this anymore. And it's like, you know, because here's the thing, as your husband, boyfriend, man ups his game in your relationship, when that happens, as he ups his game, other women are going to want him, and then what are you going to do? Like, are you going to be left behind? You know, you don't want to find yourself like not wanted if your ISFP husband is up in his game. Like, imagine, like, all of a sudden he picks up a guitar one day, and then before you know it, 2 years later, he's actually a rock star. What are you going to do? That can happen in any moment. Men can change like that. When they find something, then they're just all over that. You're not going to be able to get away from it, you know. And men, keep your game up. Keep your game up. Without game, you got nothing. I don't care how shallow that sounds. That's just the reality. You know, I'll say it a third time. Your woman is only as attracted to you as other women are. That's just the reality. So live your life by that reality. Make sure you two take care of each other's emotional needs, because psychologically speaking, you're not able to meet each other's emotional needs. Therefore, you have to communicate your way through your emotional needs. ISFP needs to be more caring towards the ESTJ and not as selfish. The ESTJ needs to make sure that they are not putting their status above their ISFP, and they are working to contribute to the status of the ISFP. And that plus huge, awesome, great sex, you guys will have the greatest relationship, probably the best and most fulfilling relationship out of all of the 16 types, because the Pedagogue relationship is just that good. The amount of personal growth that it provides, the amount of accountability that it provides, the amount of healthy conflict that it provides, the Pedagogue relationship, in a lot of cases, people would claim that it is second to none. So I suggest that you consider these things before investing in this kind of relationship. It'll probably be the greatest thing that you've ever done for yourselves. I highly recommend it. I learned a lot and a ton from my Pedagogue relationship, and I have to say, you know, it was great. It was really great up until like the point that she like betrayed me, and there's a lot of other problems with it. But until those things happened, you know, it was pretty excellent in the beginning. But you know, there's other opportunities that I've had, you know, to be with pedagogues. You know, basically for me it's INFJs, and you know, I've always been able to be close to INFJs, and it's for that reason. And I've had enough practice with INFJs that I can meet their emotional needs. I actually can, even though I have FI Trickster, but I can. And that's something, there's something to be said for that. There's really, really something to be said for that. Not only that, the personal growth that's afforded to a pedagogue relationship, when you're looking at the content of Season 19, your cognitive gateways will actually develop faster because you're being forced to. You're forced to develop your gateways in an orderly manner, in a healthy manner, a meaningful manner, to be able to meet the needs of the other person you're in a relationship with, which ultimately helps you on the path to enlightenment. Which means, in my opinion, pedagogue relationship, out of all of the different relationships, at least the top 5 sexual relationships that I recommend to people, is the one that you should be able to reach enlightenment faster and cognitive integration faster with than any other relationship. Because the pedagogue is your teacher. They teach you, you teach them, you're each other's teacher. You're literally sleeping with your teacher, funnily enough. But it's not like I'm trying to get you all to act like Emmanuel Macron, but I'm trying to, you know, get you guys to like understand, you know, the usefulness of this relationship and how it can have lasting benefits forever. Not only that, both of you can have a shoulder-to-shoulder united front for when you have a TE or a TIFE child as well, which has even more benefits because you can actually both emotionally develop the TI user and make sure that they don't have an echo chamber, and that TI user could actually become super, super brilliant as a result of your pedagogue relationship. So keep that in mind, folks. It's an amazing relationship, and barring these issues that you'll have to maintain for yourselves, make sure that you continue in this way, and make sure that you're able to you know, figure all that out. So anyway, folks, if you found this lecture useful, helpful, educational, enlightening, please leave a comment below. If you have any questions, leave them below as well. Thank you all for being members. We really appreciate it. So anyway, folks, you have a happy 4th of July, and I'll see you guys tonight.